They say your teenage years are the best time of your life. A symphony of laughter, innocent first loves, and limitless dreams. But for those of us who grew up in a small, dull town like Harmony Creek, Ohio, being a teenager felt more like a long, sad song on repeat. It was a monotonous existence. School, home, homework, then back to school again. Summers were even worse when the boredom would thicken and stick to everything like a layer of rust. And it's in that crucible of boredom that the craziest and most dangerous ideas are forged. My name is Jake. Back then, my world revolved around my two best friends, Isabella, who we all called Belle, and Anna. We were an inseparable trio fighting back against the tediousness of Harmony Creek with the only weapon we had: youthful recklessness. Belle was our unofficial leader. She had hair as fiery red as her spirit. Belle never backed down from a challenge, no matter how silly or dangerous it was. She was the one who dared us to climb the town water tower on a full moon night, or to sneak into the abandoned movie theater downtown just to watch a silent film in silence. Belle craved excitement. She craved the feeling of being truly alive, not just existing. Anna, on the other hand, was the voice of reason, though it was often a faint one. She had big brown eyes that were always filled with worry, and she was always the first to point out the risks in Belle's plans. But despite her fear, Anna was fiercely loyal. She would bite her nails, she would sigh, but in the end, she would always follow us, clutching her flashlight like it was a talisman. As for me, I was somewhere in the middle. I wasn't as reckless as Belle, but not as timid as Anna. I was the observer, the storyteller, the one who always felt a responsibility to look out for my two friends, even though, in truth, I was just as thrilled by our adventures as they were. We had tried every test of courage you could think of. We'd played with a Ouija board in my basement, the planchette moving strangely between our trembling fingers. We'd camped overnight in the whispering fields, where the ghost of a murdered farmer was said to still roam. Every adventure ended the same way. A few minutes of heart-pounding terror, a few screams over a snapping twig or a passing owl, and then endless laughter on the way home. We never actually found any ghosts, but the hunt was always fun. The summer I turned 17, Belle found a new target, a challenge she called the pinnacle of all ghost hunts. It was the Blackwood House. The house stood alone on an old stretch of Route 66 about 5 miles out of town. It had been abandoned for decades, ever since a fateful night in October of 1985. The story of what happened there had become a piece of local folklore, a cautionary tale parents told their children. The Blackwoods were a wealthy family, and on Halloween night that year, their only son, a high school football star, threw a massive party while his parents were away. The party got out of control. A fire started in the basement. Some said it was electrical, others whispered about a satanic ritual gone wrong. The flames spread with terrifying speed. 6 teenagers were trapped and killed, including the Blackwood's son. Many others were badly injured. The tragedy cast a long, dark shadow over our town for years. The Blackwood family moved away soon after, never to return. They left the house behind, a charred monument to the young lives that were lost. To most people, the Blackwood House was a place of sadness and loss. But to Belle, it was a magnet. "It's the ultimate spot, Jake," she said one humid July evening as we sat on my porch watching fireflies blink in the garden. "If there are ghosts anywhere in Harmony Creek, they have to be there." "I don't know, Belle," Anna chimed in, her voice laced with anxiety. "That place, it feels different. People say that at night sometimes they can still hear music and screams coming from the house." "Exactly," Belle exclaimed, her eyes shining. "Isn't that the whole reason to go? Think about it, we'll be the only ones who dared. We'll have a story to tell for the rest of our lives." I looked over at Anna, who was twisting the hem of her shirt. I felt a sense of apprehension too. Our previous adventures were just harmless games. But the Blackwood House was different. The pain there was real. "Maybe Anna's right," I said. "Joking around in a place like that? It doesn't seem right." Belle sighed, disappointment clouding her face. "Come on, Jake. Don't tell me you're scared too. I thought you were our protector. It's just a little exploration. We go in, look around, and get out. Nothing is going to happen." She leaned forward, her voice a conspiratorial whisper. "Or do you guys actually believe in ghosts?" That was the kill shot. For a teenager, admitting you believe in ghosts is like admitting you still believe in Santa Claus. The pride of youth wouldn't allow it. I glanced at Anna, and I knew she was thinking the same thing. We were cornered. "All right," I said, trying to sound brave. "This Friday after dark." Belle's triumphant smile was as bright as a beacon in the dusk. Anna just sighed and nodded reluctantly. The decision had been made. We were going to the Blackwood House. We were going to confront the ghosts of the past. We had no idea then that we were about to awaken something that had been sleeping for many years, and it would not be happy to be disturbed. Friday night arrived with a drizzling rain typical of an Ohio summer. The sky was a heavy gray blanket with not a single star able to pierce the thick cloud cover. "Perfect weather for a ghost hunt," Belle had remarked with a wide grin. We parked my dad's old pickup truck about a half-mile from the house on a slick dirt road and walked the rest of the way. The air was damp and cold. The chirping of crickets and frogs seemed to die out as we approached the Blackwood property. A rusting, crooked iron fence was the only boundary between our world and the houses. The gate was chained shut, but one of the hinges was broken, leaving a gap just wide enough for us to squeeze through. The once manicured garden was now an overgrown jungle. Weeds grew waist-high, soaked with rain, whipping against our legs as we walked. The stone path to the front door had all but disappeared under a layer of moss and vines. And then, the house emerged before us, a huge, dark, silent silhouette. It was even scarier than I had imagined. The white paint was peeling in large strips, revealing rotting wood underneath. Dark soot stains were still starkly visible around the second-floor window frames like unhealing scars. Most of the window panes were broken, leaving dark, empty sockets that seemed to stare down at us. The front porch had half collapsed, looking like a crooked, toothless mouth. "Whoa," Belle whispered, her voice a little shaky for the first time that night. "It's really something." We circled around to the back, hoping for an easier way in. The back door was locked tight, but a kitchen window had long been shattered. Belle, without a moment's hesitation, used her elbow to push out the remaining shards of glass and climbed inside. I helped Anna through first, then pulled myself in, landing on the kitchen floor with a soft thud. Inside, the air was thick with the smell of damp, decay, and the faint, acrid scent of old ash. It was pitch black. Not a sliver of light penetrated from outside. We switched on our flashlights. I had one. Anna had one. Our two weak beams cut through the room, revealing a scene of utter desolation. The kitchen furniture was still there, covered in a thick layer of dust and cobwebs. A dining table was overturned, chairs scattered around it. On the walls, the floral wallpaper was yellowed and torn, exposing patches of stained plaster beneath. The silence in here was heavy. It pressed in on our ears, broken only by our own shallow breaths and the drumming of the rain outside. My initial excitement had quickly evaporated, replaced by a growing sense of unease. This place didn't feel like the other haunted spots we'd visited. There was a real sadness here, a weight of tragedy that still lingered in the air. "Let's go," Belle said, her voice a determined whisper. She wanted to go deeper. We passed through the dining room and into the living room. This must have been where the party was held. It was a massive room with a huge stone fireplace at one end. The furniture was draped in white sheets, looking like motionless ghosts sitting in the dark. The beams from our flashlights danced over the strange shapes. A bit of my excitement returned. I chuckled quietly and nudged Belle, who was walking beside me. "See that fat guy sitting on the sofa?" I teased. Belle laughed softly, but Anna didn't. She kept a tight grip on my arm. "I really don't like this place, Jake. Let's go home." "Just a little longer," Belle said. "I want to go upstairs." As soon as the words left her mouth, something strange happened. The flashlight in Anna's hand flickered a few times, its light growing dim, and then it went out completely. "Oh no!" Anna cried out, her voice filled with panic. The room was suddenly twice as dark, lit only by my flashlight. "It's probably just the batteries," I said, trying to reassure her, though my own heart began to beat faster. We tried smacking the flashlight, hoping to bring it back to life, but it was no use. It was dead. And then, in the silence, we heard a sound. Creak. It was a long, drawn-out creak of wood, as if a heavy door had just been opened somewhere in the house. The sound seemed to come from upstairs. We stood frozen, holding our breath. The goosebumps on my arms prickled. The rain outside seemed to have stopped, making the silence inside even more terrifying. I quickly swept my flashlight beam around the room, then up toward the dark staircase. Nothing. What was that?" Anna stammered, her voice trembling. "Probably just the wind," Belle said, but her voice lacked its usual confidence. And then, Anna let out a piercing scream, a shriek so sharp it made me jump. She pointed toward the end of the first-floor hallway where a series of bedroom doors stood. One of those doors, a door I was certain had been closed tight when we passed it, was now cracked open. "Look!" Shaking, I aimed my flashlight in the direction she was pointing. My heart felt like it was going to pound its way out of my chest. Through the crack in the open door, in the thick darkness of the room beyond, I saw it. An eye. It was wide open, gleaming, staring straight at us through the crack. A primal fear surged through me. My mind went blank. My only instinct was to protect my friends. I immediately pulled both Belle and Anna behind me and aimed the flashlight squarely at the door, shouting, "Who's there? What are you?" The moment I spoke, the terrifying thing in the room made a sound. But it wasn't a growl or a ghostly moan. It was a soft, almost sweet meow. And then a small, sleek black cat casually trotted out of the room and began to weave around our legs. The tension, stretched to its breaking point, suddenly snapped. We looked at each other, our faces still pale with fear, and then all three of us burst out laughing. A loud, almost manic laughter of pure relief. A cat. It was just a damn cat that had scared us half to death. "See?" Belle said, gasping for breath between laughs. "I told you it was nothing." Our ghost hunt, like all the others, had ended with a bit of a thrill and a humorous twist. We decided against going upstairs. That was enough for one night. We cheerfully climbed out of the house, feeling brave and foolish. We joked all the way back to the truck, recounting the looks of terror on each other's faces when we saw the ghostly eye. We thought it would be just another fun memory to add to our collection of adventures. The high from our adventure at the Blackwood House lasted for exactly 2 days. For those 2 days, we were the heroes of our own story. At school, we'd exchange knowing glances and secret smiles, as if sharing some great victory that no one else could understand. We retold the story of the ghostly eye a dozen times, each telling more dramatic than the last, and we'd end in roaring laughter, remembering the brilliant trick the black cat had played on us. We had faced fear, and won. At least that's what we told ourselves. But then, just like sugar dissolving in coffee, the excitement gradually faded, leaving behind an unpleasant, bitter taste. The laughter started to feel forced. The silences between us were no longer comfortable but filled with an unspoken tension. The story about the cat wasn't funny anymore. Instead, other details from that night began to creep back into my mind. The creaking sound from upstairs, Anna's flashlight dying so suddenly, and the feeling, an unshakable feeling that we hadn't been alone in that house even before the cat appeared. I started to notice the change in Belle first. Our brave, reckless leader seemed to have vanished, replaced by a nervous, anxious girl. She started getting dark circles under her eyes as if she hadn't slept for nights. In class, instead of tossing wadded-up notes to tease me like she usually did, she'd just sit silently, staring off into empty space. Sometimes in the hallway, she would stop abruptly, whipping her head around to look behind her, her face pale with something only she could see. Anna and I were worried. We tried to ask her what was wrong, but Belle just brushed it off. "I'm fine," she'd say, a weak smile on her lips. "Just a little tired." But we knew that wasn't the truth. The fire in her eyes had been replaced by a smoldering fear. About a week after our trip to the Blackwood House, the three of us were at our usual diner after school. Everything seemed almost normal. I was telling a terrible joke and Anna was giggling. But Belle wasn't. She was sitting across from Anna, and I saw her staring not at Anna but at the empty space just over Anna's shoulder. Her eyes were wide, her pupils dilated in a silent terror. "Belle, you listening to me?" I asked. She didn't answer. The milkshake glass in her hand began to tremble, and then it slipped, crashing onto the table with a loud clatter, spilling pink milkshake everywhere. Everyone in the diner turned to look. "Belle! What the hell?" I asked, grabbing napkins to clean up the mess. Belle flinched as if waking from a nightmare. She looked down at the mess, then at us, her face ashen. I'm sorry," she stammered. I thought I saw something." "Saw what?" Anna asked worriedly, reaching across the table to take her friend's hand. Belle's hand was ice cold. "It was nothing," Belle said, quickly pulling her hand back. "Just a dizzy spell, probably from not sleeping enough." She stood up, grabbing her backpack. "I have to go home. I'll see you guys later." And with that, she left, leaving Anna and me with a puddle of strawberry milkshake and a mess of unanswered questions. That night, I got a call from Belle. It was almost midnight. "Jake," her voice was a shaky, panicked whisper over the phone. Is Anna there with you?" "No, she's at her house. What's wrong, Belle?" Nothing. I just wanted to be sure." There was a long pause. I could hear her ragged breathing. "Hey, Jake, do you think we brought something back with us from that house?" Her question hung in the air, cold and terrifying. "What do you mean?" I asked, though a sense of dread was already coiling in my stomach. "Never mind. I'm just talking crazy. Good night, Jake." And she hung up, leaving me in the dark with a dial tone and a slowly forming fear. Things came to a head the following Friday. We were in the locker room after gym class. I was already changed and waiting for the girls. Anna came out of the showers first, cheerfully toweling her wet hair as she walked toward Belle's locker. The moment Anna got close, Belle, who was sitting on the bench, let out a blood-curdling scream. It wasn't a scream of surprise. It was a scream of pure, absolute horror. She fell backward off the bench, scrambling away and pressing herself into the corner of the room, her wide eyes fixed on Anna as if she were looking at a monster. "Don't come near me!" Belle shrieked, her voice cracking. "Get away from me!" Anna froze, her face turning pale with confusion and fear. "Belle? What's wrong?" "It's me. It's Anna." "No! Behind you! It's right behind you!" Belle sobbed, pointing at Anna with a trembling finger. I rushed over, placing myself between them. "Belle, calm down! There's no one behind her." I turned to look. Nothing. just a wall of white tiles. But Belle couldn't calm down. She was hysterical, curled into a ball, repeating over and over, "It's there. It's right there." It took a long time after Anna and I had managed to get her outside to a bench in the schoolyard for her to finally tell us everything. Her words came out in broken sobs, but they painted a picture more terrifying than any ghost we had ever imagined. Belle said it started right after that night at the Blackwood House. At first, it was just a feeling, the feeling that someone was standing behind Anna. Then she started to see it. In the beginning, it was faint, like a smudge of smoke or a heat haze in the air, a small distortion in the space right behind Anna. She tried to ignore it, telling herself her eyes were playing tricks on her. But the shadow grew clearer and clearer. It slowly took shape, the shape of a person, tall and impossibly thin, but made entirely of blackness. "I tried not to believe it," Belle wept. "I thought I was going crazy, but it kept getting more real. Today, and when Anna walked towards me, I saw it, clearer than ever, and it reached out an arm, a long, spindly arm, and it pointed right at me." We listened to Belle's story, our faces drained of all color. There was no hint of a joke or an exaggeration in her words. The horror in her eyes was real. Anna started to cry, constantly glancing over her shoulder, even though she knew she couldn't see what Belle saw. The fear was no longer a game. It had become our reality, a terrifying, unexplainable reality. In the days that followed, we lived in a state of constant fear. We tried to research the Blackwood House. We went to the town library, spending hours scrolling through microfilm reels of old newspapers from 1985. We reread the details of the fire, the names of the 6 victims. But beyond those articles, there was nothing. No rumors of a shadow, no ghost stories connected to a specific entity. The house's history seemed to begin and end with the tragedy of the fire. We had hit a dead end. We didn't know what it was or where it had come from. We were trapped. What were 3 17-year-olds supposed to do when faced with the supernatural? Tell our parents? The thought was laughable. My parents were incredibly strict. If they found out we had snuck into an abandoned house, I'd be grounded until I graduated from college. Anna's parents were devoutly religious. They'd think we had summoned a demon and would drag us to church for an exorcism. And Belle's parents were divorced and so wrapped up in their own lives they rarely paid attention to what she did anyway. In the end, the fear of our family's punishment seemed somehow even greater than the fear of the mysterious shadow. With the flawed logic of teenagers, we made the worst possible decision. We would remain silent. We would ignore it. We told ourselves that if we didn't give it any attention, maybe it would get bored and just disappear. That was a fatal mistake, because the shadow wasn't bored. It was just being patient. 3 months passed. Summer ended, and a new school year began. Life seemed to return to normal. Belle stopped talking about the shadow and we stopped asking. Maybe ignoring it had actually worked. We allowed ourselves to believe that. Until a Tuesday morning in November. Belle didn't come to school. That was strange. She rarely missed a day. That afternoon, Belle's mom called me. She said Belle had been in an accident. Anna and I rushed to the hospital. We found Belle in a bed, her left leg encased in a thick white cast. She looked tired and pale, but she managed a weak smile when she saw us. She said that on her way to school she had stepped out onto the street and hadn't noticed an oncoming car. Luckily, the driver had slammed on the brakes in time. She was only hit with a glancing blow and had a broken tibia. "It was so stupid," Belle said, trying to sound cheerful. "I wasn't even going to go to school today. I woke up with a slight fever and was going to call in sick, but for some reason I just went through the motions, getting dressed, eating breakfast, and walking out the door. It was like I was sleepwalking." Those words sent a chill down my spine, and Anna's too. Went through the motions, like I was sleepwalking. It didn't sound like a random accident. It sounded like an unseen push. Did you see anything?" Anna asked timidly, her meaning clear. Belle was quiet for a long time. "No," she finally answered, but she wouldn't meet our eyes. "I didn't see anything." We tried to believe her. We told ourselves it was just an unlucky accident. We desperately hoped that the shadow was gone and that this had nothing to do with it. Because if it did, it meant we were no longer safe. It meant the shadow wasn't just following and watching anymore. It had started to act, and Belle was its first target. That winter in Harmony Creek seemed to last forever. Snow fell in thick sheets, covering the town in a white blanket, burying the streets, the houses, and our painful memories. Belle's cast became a strange symbol for the three of us. A physical wound, a reminder that we had been hurt, but that we had survived. During those cold months, a false peace settled over us. We no longer mentioned the Blackwood House. That name became taboo, a key that could unlock a Pandora's box of fears that we were desperately trying to keep sealed. We didn't talk about the shadow either. Belle never brought it up, and we didn't dare to ask. We had made an unspoken agreement, a pact of silence. We believed with the naive logic of youth that if we didn't name the demon, maybe it would forget we existed. But silence couldn't erase the invisible scars. Our friendship had changed. The carefree recklessness of before was gone, replaced by a fragile, brittle quality. We still walked together, still sat at the same lunch table, but our laughter no longer came as easily. An invisible distance had formed between us, created by a shared secret too terrible to speak of. I found myself becoming overprotective. I was always walking behind Anna, my eyes constantly scanning the empty space behind her, searching for something I could never see. Anna became quiet and jumpy. Every unexpected noise made her flinch. And Belle, she tried so desperately to be herself again. When her cast came off in early spring, she threw a small freedom party, declaring that all the bad luck was behind her. She laughed and joked again, but in her eyes I saw a hollowness, a fear that had taken root deep in her soul. The fire that once burned so brightly was now just a flickering ember, ready to be extinguished by any passing breeze. We were living like survivors of a battle, trying to piece our lives back together while the enemy was still hiding somewhere in the shadows, waiting for its moment. And then, that moment came, on a beautiful Saturday in late May. It was the first truly warm day of the year. The sun was brilliant, the sky a cloudless blue, and a gentle breeze carried the scent of flowers and damp earth. It was a perfect day to shake off the gloom of winter. Belle and Anna came over to my house. My mom had made a large pitcher of lemonade, and we sat on the back porch, soaking in the warmth. My family's pool, which had lain dormant all winter under a tarp, was now open, its clear blue water sparkling invitingly in the sun. "Hey, let's go for a swim," Belle suggested suddenly, her eyes lighting up with genuine excitement for the first time in months. To celebrate my healed leg and the first real day of summer? Anna was hesitant. I don't know. I'm not a very good swimmer. Neither am I, Belle laughed. But we'll just stay in the shallow end. Come on, it'll be fun, just like the old days. Those words, just like the old days, carried a strange weight. All three of us longed for that, longed to go back to being the carefree kids we were before the shadow of the Blackwood House fell over us. I could see Anna was convinced. "Okay," she said, a shy smile on her face. For a moment, everything seemed to have returned to normal. The girls ran inside to change into their swimsuits, their giggles echoing through the house. I watched them from the porch, a feeling of warmth and hope spreading through me. Maybe we had really gotten through it. Maybe the demon had given up and left. Belle and Anna jumped into the pool, shrieking as the still chilly water hit them. They splashed each other, laughing happily. Belle, though she still had a slight limp, looked so alive and full of joy. Seeing them like that, I felt an immense sense of relief. "I'm going inside to grab more lemonade and some snacks," I said. I went into the house and up to the second floor, where our game room had a balcony that overlooked the entire backyard. As I was grabbing some sodas from the mini fridge, I heard louder screams and laughter from the pool. I smiled, walking out onto the balcony to see what they were up to. And that's when I witnessed it all, a horrific scene that will haunt me for the rest of my life. From up high, I had a perfect view. Belle and Anna were playing near the edge of the pool in the shallow end. Belle was standing on the concrete edge, pretending she was about to jump in to scare Anna. Anna was laughing and daring her to do it. Everything looked completely normal. Then suddenly it happened. Belle lost her balance. It didn't look like a normal slip. Her body suddenly went rigid, her legs seemed to lock up, and then she toppled into the water like a felled tree. She fell forward, her arms flailing helplessly in the air. One of those arms caught Anna's, who was standing closest, and pulled her into the water with her. There was a loud splash. I froze on the balcony, the cans of soda in my hands crashing to the floor. At first, it was just panic. Neither of them could swim well. Anna was flailing frantically near the edge, in water that was only chest deep. She was choking and sputtering, but she was able to grab onto the side. But Belle was different. She had fallen further out, near the drop-off to the deep end. And something strange was happening. Instead of trying to get to the side, her body was drifting out toward the middle of the pool, toward the deepest part. It was as if an invisible current was pulling her away. She was struggling desperately, her head bobbing under the water. "Belle! Anna!" I screamed, my heart constricting. I turned to dash down the stairs, but something stopped me cold. Something horrifying that I saw from my high vantage point. Something I probably wouldn't have seen if I were on the ground. Beneath the clear blue water of the pool, right under Belle, I saw it. A hand. It wasn't a shadow or a hallucination. It was solid. A slender hand, black as coal, with long, spindly fingers like dry twigs. It rose slowly from the bottom of the pool without making a single ripple, as if it were a part of the water itself. I saw it with perfect clarity. Belle managed to push her head above the surface to gasp for air, her mouth open in a silent scream. And then, the black hand rose, placed itself on the crown of her head and pushed down. Hard. Belle was submerged again. The water churned violently. She bobbed to the surface one more time, her face purple, her eyes wide with terror. She looked up at me as if pleading for help, but before I could do anything, the hand appeared again and pushed her down once more, this time harder. And then, Belle didn't come back up. The bubbles stopped. The surface of the pool grew still, leaving only Anna sobbing hysterically, clinging to the side. My paralysis broke. A wild scream tore from my throat. I launched myself down the stairs, taking them two at a time, my heart hammering like a frantic war drum. The world blurred. The only things in focus were the pool and Belle's motionless body floating beneath the surface. I didn't think. Instinct took over. I dove into the pool, the cold water a shock to my system. Anna was closer. She was losing her grip. I swam to her first, pulling her to the edge with one arm. "Hold on!" I yelled, and without a second's hesitation, I turned and swam toward the middle of the pool. I plunged my head underwater. The chlorine stung my eyes. I opened them and saw Belle floating right in front of me, her red hair drifting around her like a halo of seaweed. I saw no black hand. Nothing. I grabbed Belle's arm and used all my strength to pull her to the surface and back to the edge. She was a dead weight, lifeless. I heaved her onto the concrete and started CPR, a skill I'd only half learned in health class. I pressed on her chest, breathed air into her mouth, screaming her name. But it was too late. Belle's eyes remained closed. Her skin was pale. She was gone. I don't remember much of what happened next. It was all a chaotic blur of screams, the piercing wail of sirens, and strange faces. The police came. They investigated for days. They watched the footage from the security camera my dad had installed in the backyard. And that's when my nightmare got infinitely worse. The tape recorded everything. It showed Belle horsing around, then slipping. It showed her accidentally pulling Anna in. It showed me rushing down from the balcony and trying to save them. It proved that this was a tragic swimming accident, a terrible misfortune. But it did not show a black hand. On the screen there was nothing in the water but Belle and Anna. Belle had struggled alone, and she had drowned alone. I told the police what I saw. They looked at me with pity. They said it was the shock, that in moments of extreme horror the mind can create things that aren't real. Even my own parents thought so. They thought I was suffering from severe psychological trauma. And when they asked Anna, she just shook her head through her tears. Anna hadn't seen anything. All she remembered was being pulled underwater and panicking. Only I saw the truth. A truth that no one believed, a truth for which there was no proof. The shadow from the Blackwood House had kept its promise. It had pointed at Belle, and it had come to claim her. Anna and I lived through the worst days of our young lives after that. Grief, guilt, and terror consumed my mind. I hadn't been able to save Belle. And maybe Anna felt the same way. Our friendship, our final bond, was severed by this tragedy. We stopped seeing each other, stopped talking. The pain was too great, and the secret that only the two of us knew was even greater. Belle's death was officially recorded as an accident. But I knew the truth, and I knew that this wasn't the end. It had only targeted one of us so far. There were still two of us left. Belle's funeral was held on a gloomy Wednesday morning, a light rain falling as if nature itself was mourning a young life taken too soon. The small-town church was packed. I sat in the very back pew, huddled into myself, feeling like a stranger at my own tragedy. I saw Anna sitting on the other side of the aisle with her family. Our eyes met only once during the entire service. In her big brown eyes, I didn't see the shared grief I had expected, but only an emptiness, a cold distance. She looked at me as if I were a part of the nightmare she wanted to forget. And maybe I looked at her the same way. The tragedy hadn't brought us together. It had built an invisible wall impossibly high between us. After the funeral, our trio was officially disbanded. Belle was gone forever, and the us, Jake and Anna, had died with her. We stopped talking to each other. At school, we avoided each other in the hallways like strangers. Our shared grief had become a private burden that neither of us could bear in the other's presence. To Anna, I was probably a living reminder of that horrific day at the pool. And to me, Anna was the only other person in the world who knew about the shadow, but she hadn't seen what I saw. That left me terrifyingly alone. I was trapped with a truth that nobody believed. I tried to convince my parents again after the funeral, recounting the details of the Black Hand. They listened, and then they took me to see a therapist. The doctor said I was experiencing a complex form of PTSD, or post-traumatic stress disorder. He said that my mind, in order to cope with the shock of watching my friend drown, had created a visible culprit, the hand, to blame, rather than accepting the random, cruel reality of an accident. I tried to believe that explanation. I really did. I took the medication. I went to the therapy sessions. I lied and said I wasn't seeing the image in my nightmares anymore. I did everything the adults told me to do, but deep down, I knew what I had seen. It wasn't a figment of my imagination. It was as real as the pain that was gnawing at my heart. The last years of high school passed in a blur of loneliness and grief. The moment I got my acceptance letter from a university in California, thousands of miles from Harmony Creek, I didn't hesitate for a second. It wasn't just an opportunity for an education, it was an escape. I had to leave that town, leave that house with its swimming pool, leave the memories of Belle and Anna. I had to run from the shadow that I believed was still lurking somewhere in the dark corners of my hometown. And for a long time, I thought I had succeeded. 7 years passed. I was 24 years old now. I'd graduated from college, landed a stable job in graphic design in San Diego. I lived in a small apartment overlooking the ocean. I had a few new friends, and I was even dating a kind girl named Clara. I had built a new life for myself, a fortress built from the bricks of daily routines and willful forgetting. Harmony Creek and the Blackwood House felt like they belonged to another lifetime. I rarely visited home. I never told anyone about Belle or about the way she had really died. That part of my past was locked away, thrown into the deepest part of my memory. Sometimes the nightmares would return, the image of the black hand rising from the water, but they became less and less frequent. I had convinced myself that the therapist was right. It was trauma, and I was healing. I had almost convinced myself it was true. Until yesterday. It was a normal Tuesday evening. I had just gotten home from work, standing in my kitchen preparing dinner. Soft jazz was playing from a smart speaker, and the smell of garlic sautéing filled the apartment. Outside, the sun was setting over the Pacific Ocean, painting the sky in brilliant oranges. A peaceful scene. Safe. And then, my phone rang. It was an unknown number with an Ohio area code. My heart skipped a beat. I hadn't gotten a call from Ohio in years. I almost ignored it, but some morbid curiosity urged me to answer. "Hello?" I said, my voice cautious. "Jake?" A voice came from the other end of the line. A voice I hadn't heard in 7 years, but one I recognized instantly. It was older, but the tremble in it was the same. "Anna?" I blurted out, the kitchen knife in my hand suddenly unsteady. "Is that you, Anna?" "Yes, it's me," she sobbed. "Jake, I'm sorry to call. I didn't know who else to call." Her voice was frantic, broken by tears. It's okay," I said quickly, though my own heart had started to race. "What's wrong? Are you all right?" "No, I'm not okay at all," she cried. "Jake, I'm seeing it again." The air was sucked out of my lungs. The warm kitchen suddenly felt ice cold. The fortress I had spent 7 years building crumbled to dust in a single second. Seeing what, Anna?" I asked, though I already knew the answer. "The shadow! Jake, the shadow!" She screamed into the phone, the terror in her voice so real it traveled thousands of miles and stabbed me right in the heart. "It's back! I thought it was gone. I haven't seen anything for 7 years. But now, it's here again." I leaned against the kitchen counter, my legs weak. "Are you sure, Anna? Maybe..." "I'm sure," she cut me off. "It's exactly the same as before, Jake. A tall, lanky, pitch-black shadow with no face. It's standing right behind me again." A heavy silence fell. I could hear Anna's terrified, ragged breathing over the line. And then she uttered one last sentence. A sentence that extinguished any last flicker of hope inside me. A sentence that confirmed our nightmare had never truly ended. "I'm so scared, Jake," she whispered, her voice barely audible. "What happened to Belle? Is it going to happen to me?" I didn't know what to say. I muttered some meaningless words of comfort, promised I'd call back, promised I'd figure out a way to help. But when we hung up, I just stood frozen in my kitchen, the knife still clutched tightly in my hand. 7 years. 7 years of silence. We had run. We had changed. We had tried to forget, but it hadn't forgotten. The shadow hadn't forgotten. It had waited patiently. It had let us grow up, let us build new lives, let us have something to lose. And now, it had returned to collect its debt. I truly don't know if what happened to Belle will happen to Anna, or even to me. It targeted Belle after pointing at her. But who has it been behind for the last 7 years? Anna, or both of us? Tonight, for the first time in years, I won't be able to sleep. I'm sitting in the darkness of my San Diego apartment, but my mind is in Harmony Creek, right beside that pool. I've changed the names and places in this story, out of a superstitious fear that speaking too much of the arcane might draw us closer to the danger. But this is truly what my ill-fated friend went through. It's been so many years. I thought I had overcome the pain. I never expected it to find us again. This time, I'm afraid it's not just behind Anna. A cold fear is whispering to me that perhaps it has been right beside me all along.